What's going on, everybody? How are you doing today? I hope you're having a fantastic day, especially with all the craziness going on in the world. I know it's hard to stay optimistic, but you can do it. You know why? Because you're a part of a community that is geared towards positivity, bridging gaps, breaking barriers, and bringing people closer together. So today we have a great discussion. I got a special guest that's going to be on here today who is out there on the front line, seeing things firsthand. We're going to get his perspective. I don't know much about him except that he's out there. So you're going to be meeting him the same way I'm going to be meeting him. I really feel it's going to be interesting. So today, you already know we have our guest co-host, Anthony, Be the Change, Russo.
Hold on, my agent. I gotta go. Okay, good. Okay, all right.
All right, and then we got Mr. Breathe America, Patrick Wickard, also the co-host, my brother.
What's up, everybody? No phone, no acting important. Sorry, not my style.
Gotcha. And then we got our special guest, Mr. Chuck Holton.
How you doing?
That was good. How's everybody doing today?
Fantastic. That was that's the COVID dab right there. Like, I gotta sneeze. No COVID.
But it's a cough.
Yeah.
All right. So we're talking protest/riots because it's no longer a protest. The message has been lost, in my opinion, and Patrick's opinion, because we were just talking about that. The message has been totally lost, and now at this point, they're just anarchists, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm gonna hand it over to my man, Mr. Russo. This way, yeah. It's camera, not my fault. Mr. Russo, go ahead.
All right. So first off, I think it's hilarious that we got Chuck on this show because we were talking about this backstage. I've been reaching out to Chuck for about a couple hours ago because I was like, I need somebody that's actually been on the ground in Portland. It's very hard to get that conversation. Turns out, so is Pash and Patrick, and that's how Chuck was on the show. So when he's like, I got a show starting in 15 minutes. I got to be on. I can't do it just yet. Turns out it's the same show. Anyway. So
I got him first.
You got it first. So it's for the same show. So here's the deal. So as we all know, when we're watching Portland and the occupancy of the federal government and the feds have been almost a month now. Actually, it might be a little bit over a month. It started to escalate recently. The question becomes, and it really escalated this last weekend. I think the numbers were up to 15,000. But again, I can't speak exactly for that, so we'll have Chuck do that because he was on the ground there. At what point do we stop? Has the message completely been lost, especially when centrist magazines like LA Times are saying that the message is lost to Black Lives Matter as a movement, not the corporation, but Black Lives Matter as a movement, and what is really being done out there? And I know that Cash was on video the other night watching these protests, and Black people were telling the white people to stop because, as we talked about on the last show, it's literally like playing Where's Waldo with the Black people based on the metrics that I see and what Cash sees and what Patrick sees. So the big question is what is the purpose of the Portland protests at this point? Specifically, I want to start with Chuck because you're there every day.
Okay, so when I was a kid, when we had free time, we would go hiking, we would play soccer, we would maybe go have a picnic or go down and go swimming in the lake or something like that. This generation in Portland, their pastime, their team sport is attacking the federal courthouse in Portland, in downtown Portland. And I say that with all seriousness. This has nothing to do with issues for most of those rioters down there, most of those young people. It's very clear, and you talk to them, it's very clear that they're enjoying themselves. They know that they cannot be hurt badly by the federal agents that are trying to protect that courthouse, and they get to go down there and engage in it. It's LARPing. It's what it is. It's LARPing. They're going down and jousting with federal agents for fun all night long. And why the heck not, man? If you can go break things, there's a certain release in that for the vast majority of these rioters. Now, to your point about whether or not this is a protest or a riot, it's both. If you go down there in the late afternoon, early evening, as it's getting dark, there is a very big protest every night. And the protest sort of centers on Black Lives Matter, but it's more Black Lives Matter, the corporation. It's more Black Lives Matter, the communist, neo-communist organization. It's more about the kinds of things that we would associate with Bernie Sanders on steroids. And it's less about the fact that, you know, we need to bridge this gap with the culture of the inner city, and not necessarily with minorities even, or with Black people, but with that other country that lives in the United States. It's not about bridging that gap so much as it is about the sort of we need healthcare for everybody, free, lots of stuff, that sort of thing. Now, you can find people who are there protesting for a whole bevy of issues. This is something that you see, as I've covered way too many protests over the last couple of years, all around the United States, whether it's an anti-gun protest, a environmental protest, whatever. What you find is that it draws this contingent of people from every left-wing cause out there, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's radical environmentalism, whether it's socialism, whether, no matter what, all of those people come and they all protest for their own thing while they're also under the auspices of whatever the protest is called. So that's what you find from about 7 p.m. to about 9 p.m. in front of the courthouse in the park there, up to 15,000 people. They come and they chant and they sing songs, and it's beautiful. It's actually pretty cool. It's after that it starts to get dark. And I mean, not just dark physically, but darker spiritually, if you want to look at it that way. This is when people start showing up dressed head to toe in black and wearing armor, wearing helmets, wearing $400 gas masks that mommy must have sprung for on their Amazon card, with a whole host of weapons. These are field expedient weapons, no doubt, whether it's their chains or bats or things like that, leaf blowers, very powerful green lasers, and lots of explosives, which are getting worse every night, from what I can tell. Now they're starting to find these very large commercial fireworks with nails embedded in them, and having those go off and actually injure people. They had one go off in Seattle over the weekend that blew an 8-inch hole in a concrete wall of a police precinct. That's an improvised explosive device like you'd see in Afghanistan or Iraq. That's not just a harmless firework. Okay, so it's getting more and more serious. As you see these people show up, they're carrying buckets full of rocks. They are coming prepared for war. And this is the thing. They know that the federal agents have very tight rules of engagement, that they can't, just wantonly shoot at people. They can't use any kind of lethal force. And these guys are pretty much, guarded against the non-lethal things that they're able to use. They're wearing gas masks, so the tear gas doesn't bother them. They have shields, so the pepper balls don't bother them. They're not using rubber bullets or anything like that down there. And so to them, it's a big game. It's a lot of fun. Go down there and let's have a good time tonight, and feel like we're doing something for the world.
Hey, Chuck, I'm loving you. Okay, I really am. This is amazing. Everything that you're saying. I have someone else I want to bring on real quick, and you can keep going, but this guy is Villain Phoenix, and he's also out there on the, I'm assuming, on the other side of things. Okay, so we're gonna bring him in. All right, Villain, what's going on?
How you doing? Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, just fine. We're gonna have the same question posed to you that Anthony just asked. Just give me a minute and let Chuck finish his thought. Okay.
All right.
All right, go ahead, Chuck. I'm sorry.
So, if you talk to the rioters, now talking to the protesters is fairly easy. Talking to the rioters is a little bit more difficult. They're much more guarded, much more closed, as we can see here. And but it becomes apparent that they are not interested in abolishing the police so much as they are interested in becoming the police. You can see this because they are blocking off roads. They're telling people where they can and cannot go. They're telling journalists like me who I can film and who I can't in a free country. They're doing lots of things to take control of the people that are in that area and of that situation. Now, I would imagine that they feel justified in doing that because they have objectives that they're trying to accomplish. But that is not America, we have to say.
I agree. I definitely agree. Anthony, pose that same question, man, over to Mr. Villain Phoenix.
So the question becomes, as we've talked with a lot of people and we have these discussions about what's going on in Portland, and one thing that I didn't clarify earlier, most people now know that it's this big. It's a super small area of Portland that's causing all of this, these issues on a national level. We look at the one thing people keep telling me is no matter how many times we watch the live videos late at night, the videos off of different people's cameras and the Twitter feeds and stuff like that, the one argument is you don't know what's going on down there. So we ultimately want to know, what is the protest? What is the current message behind the protest? What are the demands that need to be met, and why is this still continuing? And is there even any talk? And I didn't say this with Chuck, with the fact that right now there is a mass pandemic and going on, continuing, that directly affects the minority communities. So, Villain, go for it.
I just want to say who I am. I think you guys think I'm one of the rioters. I'm not. I was in the Pacific Northwest when the George Floyd incident broke out. I started watching. I had been following COVID since January. I was one of the first people that thought it was a real thing. Not necessarily real in the sense that it was going to cause a global plague-like pandemic, but that it was going to affect governments, nations, and cause riots around the world. So I started warning my friends and having people stockpile food just in case it got that way. So when the riots broke out, I went down in Portland, Oregon, and on May 29th, I believe it was, the Friday or Saturday, there was a couple of political rallies the day before that and the day of, and I just knew that night that they were going to start rioting in town, and I just wanted to go down there and watch it for myself and see what was happening. I was going to see if it turned into a Minneapolis and they were going to burn the town down, or after that, I started watching the mainstream media, and I was getting pretty sick of mainstream media the last couple of years anyways. But it really solidified my disgust with them, because they started, what I was seeing on the ground did not match what they were showing. And then on top of that, I started seeing the independent journalists, the citizen journalists out there, and they were doing the same thing with a different spin. It just didn't match what I was seeing in person. So I started documenting it. I went up to CHOP a few times. I got some pretty amazing footage on my Villain Phoenix YouTube. I was running along with some of the gunmen, not the gunmen that shot up the car, but some of the security in CHOP when that white Jeep was shot up and the two young boys that seemed to be unarmed were shot pretty bad. So I've been in the Pacific Northwest documenting this since day one. One thing I'll say is there's no main movement. There are several different factions, and I see the common denominator is anger towards authority. And what you were speaking right there, Chuck, about how these people don't want to necessarily just change the system. They want to be the rulers. It's kind of the Lord of the Fly kind of thing. I've mentioned to them several times, when they're mobbing people, when they're screaming at people, they don't want to take the neck off of innocent people's necks. And I'm not saying that George Floyd is completely innocent, but that situation was disgusting. I think a lot of people will agree with that. But they don't want to take the knee off the George Floyds in the world. They want to be the knee on the George Floyds in the world. And so it's a power struggle right there. And what you saw in CHOP as it degraded to that final shooting before they shut it down was that it was an intense power vacuum created there. I used to be, I guess I kind of still am, an idealistic anarchist. I would like to ideally see a world where there was no rulers telling me what to do. I do believe in rules, but I have a hard time with people telling me what to do when I don't have this option to opt out and choose another system. But as anybody with a mind will see, how anarchy works out, even in the most idealistic situation, is that bands of strong men feel the power vacuum and become the government that was replaced. And usually the force that replaces the previous force is worse, as we're seeing in these riots. So the idea that these riots are peaceful is nonsense. A lot of people down there I talk to will say, like, well, most of the people aren't throwing the mortars at the police. Most of the people aren't throwing the canned food and the frozen water bottles and shooting the green powerful lasers into the officers' eyes, trying to blind them. But almost everybody in the crowd cheers them on when they do that. I think it's an issue of cowardice. Not all of them are brave enough to do the anger that's in their hearts. And I think it was Gandhi that said, do not, I'm going to paraphrase horribly, but he says something along the lines of, do not cover the impotence in your heart with nonviolence. If there's anger in your heart, act on that anger. It's far better than do that to cover yourself in a cloak of nonviolence when it's just cowardice that's keeping you from doing the evil in your heart. But no, the protests aren't peaceful. That's nonsense. Most of the
that's
the
like it's like saying that you know, a murderer was completely peaceful right up until the moment he killed somebody.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, it doesn't make him a peaceful person.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting
Go ahead.
Sorry, there's an interesting hypocrisy on that philosophy of these protests are starting because they say just because a portion of the police are bad, or just because a majority of the police are good, does not mean they're a good group. Well, this is the exact example of that. That if there's a small group that's getting cheered on, they're literally celebrating as a group. They're celebrating the exact people that they're fighting against for oppression.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
You see them make memes about that, and they'll say, if you guys don't want us to judge the entire police force by the most criminal elements, then how are you judging the crowd by the most criminal elements of the protest? So they've got to double think. Whatever is beneficial to them, as in all sophistry and rhetoric, that's what they're going to go with in the moment. They're not trying to speak truth. It's just they're using rhetoric for power, not for conversation, dialogue, and an avenue to truth. But like I was going to say a second ago, things like the Wall of Moms, most of those are just the regular Antifa chicks that have been out there for weeks and weeks and weeks. They just decided to dress up like a mom for a night. A lot of them.
That's the second part of what I wanted to discuss. And Chuck, you were there, if I'm correct. You were there the night that happened. Can you tell me what led up to that and how that went?
Look, this is all very orchestrated, and it's absolutely obvious to watch. The night before that happened, it's like they choose a theme, or they choose what's the news story going to be tomorrow morning, and how do we act that out on the scene tonight. So Ted Wheeler showed up the night before. He was shouted down, he was vilified, he was yelled at and spit at and everything, but he went right up front in the front of the fence, right where the agents would have to come out, and stood there and watched a lot of felonious conduct. And as Phoenix said, he cheered it on. These people lighting fires, trying to knock the fence down, throwing projectiles, you name it. And when the agents had to come out to put the fires out, then they have to throw tear gas. They warned over the loudspeaker 5 times at least before they came out and threw tear gas that they were going to do it. And then finally they came out, they threw tear gas, everybody ran away, they scattered like cockroaches, but Ted Wheeler stood right there in the center and stood there with his security detail and waited until the gas wafted over him. And did you get the shot? Did you get the shot? And then ran away.
Wow.
And literally within minutes, that story was completely written and up on the AP website, which means that he wrote the story. He wrote the press release before it happened. So he intended for that to happen. So there's no question about that. Now, the next night, it was the Wall of Moms. And it was completely orchestrated. Like Phoenix said, most of these women were women I recognized from having been out there the night before and the night before that. And they came out, they stood shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, right across the front of that fence. And the agents didn't come out. Nothing happened. So then the Antifa guys behind the Wall of Moms started lobbing projectiles over the Wall of Moms, starting fires, doing the same thing they did before, but just doing that with the moms between them. And then the moms finally just sort of moved out of the way, but they kind of stayed off to the side. And then when the agents came out through their tear gas, the moms immediately started saying, "Oh, we got gassed, we got gassed." And it was in the news like that federal agents had gassed a bunch of moms. This was orchestrated. This was planned. This was the story. And I actually made videos about both of those incidents at that night before the news came out the next morning, predicting that that's what the news would be. And I was right, unfortunately.
I want to piggyback on the thing with Wheeler there for a second. So there are two cameras on him. Somebody's taken them and made a video side by side of the two footages. One is him being interviewed after the gas goes by, and he says something along the lines, I didn't see anything that justified the feds coming out. But there is a camera live streaming right over his shoulder. It shows it's in his point of view, people throwing projectiles at the feds, lighting a fire at the federal building in front of him. All this stuff is happening, and then he just gaslights the audience watching the.
I've got it all on video. I literally have video of him standing there while there are projectiles flying and fires starting and things like that. So I can promise you that was a lie.
I say we blow those videos up, Chuck, if you're willing. On the next Breaking the Barriers, me and you figure out a way for you to get them, and I'll share them on this, because right now we're at 442 people steady watching the show right now. So by the time we're done with this, I guarantee we'll have 15 to 20,000 views.
Well,
and then it'll blow up
let me just mention one other thing that you had sort of mentioned in your open, and that is that this maybe started out as a thing about the cultural differences and about hey, Black lives are important, and we need to pay better attention to that. We need to bridge that gap. It started out like that, but what you see now is that probably 1% of the people that are down there after 10:30 p.m. are Black, probably 1%. And the only people that I saw in 4 nights of covering this stuff that I saw standing up to the mob and saying, this is not helping, you guys are not doing a good thing here, were Black people. One of them was stabbed for his trouble right after that. But the
Black Rebel.
Oh, did you? Yeah, I interviewed him right before he was stabbed.
YouTube. I interviewed him from his hospital bed. The mainstream media is somewhat strangely uninterested in what's going on with him.
Yeah.
I'm going to blow that up too. I'm going to stay in contact with both of you all. I mean, I would love to have you just be regular on this until these riots are done. Have you guys come on and share your piece, because you're obviously there, you're on the ground, and you care.
Hey,
that's the great thing about it.
If you'll allow me to, I actually can show you one of the videos of one of the Black people yelling at people to stop.
Of course, go for it. I'll give you the wait. Go ahead, Anthony.
I've got it up here.
While Chuck brings that up, can we do the really quick, the big elephant in the room? Why is why is Villain covered up? Just out of curiosity, because you sound like you're.
I can tell you why he's covered up.
Oh, Chuck, you got it. What's up? Why?
Probably because he's out there every night and he don't want people to know who he is.
That's right, because I got assaulted about 4 times out there once I started getting recognized.
Now I know. Okay, all right. I think Phoenix might have froze.
I'd like to touch on something that Russo said in your opener about, the feds occupying this area, and, listening to Chuck and listening to Villain talk. It's interesting because the feds aren't actually occupying anything. The feds have always been responsible for defending federal buildings. That's always been their job. And if you're going to throw an explosive device or an IED or the level of things that we're seeing right now,
that Idaho internet.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what. Let me tell you guys something, man. The feds being out there, that's supposed to be the way it is, man. When they're out there doing, if it was me, if I was the president, I would have sent military already. I would have been declared a national emergency, martial law, all of that, all for right there. Just even though it's just this big, it's affecting a lot of people. It's affecting the people that live in that community. It's affecting police, civilian relations. It's affecting the racial divide. It's doing all kinds of things, and they don't care about that. And then, like you said, there's a black guy that gets stabbed. He gets stabbed for speaking out and telling them to stop. But you're there because Black Lives Matter. But this Black life doesn't matter because he's not with your agenda.
And this is how you know that it's not about Black Lives Matter, first of all. But secondly, let me just say that when these guys, look, the feds have no rules of engagement. These guys, I'm sorry, the feds have tight rules of engagement. These guys have no rules of engagement, right? So they know that they're going to be able to get away with anything out there. And that leads to a very scary environment.
Someone said in the comments right here, martial law is exactly what they want because they're trying to discredit the president. And I get that. I understand that.
I'll talk about that later.
But just because that's the case doesn't mean that it's not needed, because obviously these people are literally getting away with anything. They're doing whatever they want with no repercussions. law enforcement, if it's not going to be martial law, then the police need to gather up. They need to get a lot of the police gather up and go out there and start arresting the ones that are throwing these projectiles.
Well,
Arresting
here's why they're
stabbing
stuck between a rock and a hard place. Okay, the feds are stuck between a rock and a hard place because they have no support from the local or state government. Okay, so I've talked to Portland police and they said we have been told that we cannot go within 2 blocks of that courthouse down there. So so the feds are on their own. B, again, because of those rules of engagement, look, they can't use live ammunition on these people. They just can't do that. That's a non-starter. You can't shoot American citizens. So because these guys know that they can get away with it, they're not going to stop. And I can tell you what's going to happen because I've spent so much time in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places around the world that are war zones. And it's the same deal in Iraq and Afghanistan. U.S. troops can't just willy-nilly shoot civilians that are angry and protesting or whatever. So what they do is they end up putting up 20 or 30-foot T-walls. These are big concrete walls. They can't be knocked over. And they ring any important building with those things. So you can come up and you can, throw your fire bombs at the T-wall all you want. It's not going to affect what's on the inside of that building. And the downtown area down there is going to start looking like Baghdad or Kabul. The other option is to simply abandon that 15-story, 1 city block building and let them burn it, let them destroy it, and just say, hey, anybody that's got a court case pending for the federal court in the Northwest is going to have to come to Washington, D.C. That's a political loss. And the T-walls are probably the least, are going to cost the least from a political capital standpoint. And so that's probably what's going to happen. They're going to end up building gigantic barriers around these things. And that's it. Either that or bring in the National Guard. But I think there's some legal problems with that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We can't bring in the... Go ahead. What was that?
No, you had something you were saying before you froze up on us. Go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, so I was just talking about how, the feds are actually there, with actual jurisdiction over everything that's happening because of the things that are happening in the riots. Protesters are one thing, and I think everybody here supports Americans' right to peacefully protest, like everything that happens before 9 o'clock that Chuck was talking about. I think that's absolutely, should be a protected right of every single one of ours. But rioting is a totally different scenario. And because we see a constant escalation in things, things are going to get worse. And for everybody that's in the comments that's talking about declaring martial law, first of all, you got to understand that a martial law declaration is a national declaration. It won't just be Portland. It'll be the entirety of the United States of America. And that is something that I don't think anybody wants. So, and the other thing that to all the rioters out there, I beg you guys to hear this, because the military, if martial law is declared, they're not coming in with rubber bullets.
No.
If you attack them the way that you're attacking these officers, the answer is going to be very, very different. And that isn't how you affect social change. There's tons of studies that prove that nonviolent protests and things like that are a far more long-lasting, effective way at dealing with social change and affecting change inside of a country. So, I would just beg you guys to take a look at what you're doing. Now, I get that they're upset. I get that they may, like Chuck was saying, it looks like a good time. Let's go have some fun. Let's blow some shit up, right? But multiple officers have been injured. I know of 3 that are now permanently blind due to those high power lasers. One guy was hit with nails from an IED that I read about. So these guys are getting hurt. And they're not retaliating because their hands are tied. And if you continue to do this, at some point they're going to untie their hands, and the outcome is going to be far, far worse, because bullets, they don't care. They don't care if you're a peaceful protester in the wrong place or if you're a rioter. They're just going to go.
That's right. Or the scarier scenario is that some patriot gets so fed up watching this stuff on the news and says, you know what, screw it, I don't even care anymore. And he goes down there and does a mag dump into that crowd. And you talk about massive social upheaval. If that were to happen, all that would be to spread the embers of this fire literally across the country. We're already seeing that. I mean, 18 cities over the weekend had violent protests, violent riots. Los Angeles and Colorado, in Oakland, they burned the courthouse. We saw all of that. So these are spreading. And I think part of it is that when you tell the police to stand down, when the police have been defanged, the criminal element, the fatherless element that just has never been taught not to do this crap, says, oh, hey, we can go burn whatever we want. Great, let's go. Look, you're not advancing social justice by busting out the windows of the Louis Vuitton store. That's not what MLK and John Roberts did when they crossed the bridge to Selma. They weren't crossing the bridge to go tear up the mall. They were crossing the bridge for, like you say, that long-lasting social change. And it worked, but it worked because they were nonviolent. And this violence is only widening the division in our country. And it's that those two countries that live here, that exist here, are becoming mutually exclusive. And that's a really scary place to be, because that's the kind of thing that leads to balkanization, which means that eventually the United States is no longer the United States. It becomes 5 different countries or something like that.
So I have a question for you, Chuck, and for you, Villain. The question that I have is, what do you guys know about, or have you seen people being kidnapped? Like they say that the people in the unmarked, suits or whatever go up and pull up and they kidnap people, and all of that kind of stuff. So can you discuss that with me for a little bit? We'll start with you, Villain. You go first. You've been out of the conversation for a minute.
All right. All I know about that is what I've seen online. I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen that in several cities. I think Philadelphia and DC a couple weeks ago, and they have the same uniforms and the same minivans that they're popping up in there. I don't know. I've looked into it, and they're not unmarked officers. They do have badges on. They say police on their back. They don't usually say anything in the videos when they come up and grab the person. I've got mixed feelings about that because I'm a small government kind of person. So if you've got feds coming up and not speaking, and it was people on our side that were being snatched, I know I'd be up in arms in that. But at the same time, these riots have been going on for 60 days now, and nobody's getting prosecuted. So from what I understand, they're gathering intel and snatching up the people that are ringleaders to this and people that they have evidence on committing crimes on. Okay. So I'm torn on that. That's actually something I've been looking into more, because I don't want to say what they're doing is completely wrong, because these riots need to stop. People need to be held accountable. But at the same time, why can't it be done more openly and more transparently?
Well, here's the thing with me, my opinion on it, because I'm not there. I'm out here in Indiana. But the thing that I would say is you can't really be too much more transparent than you are. They got told multiple times, like, we're going to send these people in. We're going to send these people in. We're going to send these people in. You guys calm down, and we're going to send these people in. So finally, they send these people in, and he told them they're not coming to talk. They are not coming to talk. They're not trying to make anything clear other than we're not going to stand for this. And of course, if they are grabbing these people up and they're taking them away, and like you said, they are uniformed and they are in police, they got police on the back. That's great to hear you say that, because most Americans think, oh, they're sending in these people, they don't know who they are, and they're goons, and they're coming and they're taking people. I am all for. I think it needs to be even more than that. And I'm a guy from the hood. I used to gangbang, and I'm still out here in the hood. And I'm telling you, this shit that's going on over there needs to stop. Portland, Oregon is turning worse than Chicago. I never even heard about Portland up until this. You know what I'm saying? So, Chuck, go ahead. You weigh in on it, man. What do you know about all that?
Okay, well, I want to be careful that I don't give the impression that I've been given inside knowledge on this issue.
I understand.
And just because I'm working to get an embed inside the courthouse, and I don't want to put any information out that makes them think I'm telling bad people things they don't need to know. But I can tell you from 18 years of experience as a war correspondent and being dozens and dozens of embeds across the world, more than a dozen in both Iraq and Afghanistan, that when this happens, what you are seeing, if you understand what you're looking at, is the fact that the federal government has a very robust capability in signals intelligence. So signals intelligence has to do with listening to your cell phone, tracking your cell phone, facial recognition, the things that have to do with the internet and the radio waves. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I can guarantee you what is happening here is that the feds, their investigators, are figuring out people who are actively involved in felonious conduct, toward the federal courthouse downtown DC. They're instigators, they are facilitators, whatever. And when they get, they are not going to grab people if they don't have evidence to bring against them in a court of law, because it'd be a waste of their time.
Exactly.
But when they have enough evidence, and that can be evidence that you have no idea that they've collected, because they've been collecting your cell phone's data, they've been collecting your phone calls and your internet chat history and stuff like that. But when they have the information they think that they need to prosecute you, then they will track you down wherever you happen to be, and they will throw you into a police vehicle, whether that's marked or unmarked. Let me just ask you this. Would you feel better if these people were wearing civilian clothes and grabbing people off the street?
Exactly.
I mean,
that was the next point.
Yes, they're wearing military style uniforms, but those uniforms are not unique to the military. But they're grabbing these people and putting them under arrest and are peaceably putting them into police cars. And these people have not disappeared to Guantanamo or anything. Mostly they are arraigned and then they're allowed to leave. So yes, it's happening. And I would say that, yes, it's justified, because these guys are not stupid. I know a lot of these agents personally. I've done lots of embeds with the Border Patrol and things like that. And I can tell you, they're not going to do things like this unless they are justified in doing so legally.
Okay, so real quick, just so you know, Villain, the reason why I mute your mic, if you're seeing it, keep on saying your mic is muted, it's only because I can hear background stuff like keyboard or something like that.
Yeah, I'm having
so that's the only reason why you're muted. Here. Gotcha. So look, real quick, I got another question. Is there anything that you two being out there have that you would like for people in America to know that they aren't covering on the news, that they aren't speaking about, something that you feel is of importance that the American people need to know about this whole situation? We'll start with you, Villain. Go ahead.
All right, I want to touch on something Chuck mentioned just really fast. He said, he mentioned fatherlessness. One of the main things that I did, what people liked on my documenting style, was I interviewed a lot of people. There's a lot of interviews on my my YouTube channel, and there's a lot of interviews that were more candid and more to the heart on my Twitch streams that I was doing before I got kicked out of there. Almost everybody that I spoke to at those riots that opened up to me and was honest about their life either did not have a father or had a bad father. And there is some anger and resentment in that crowd, like you just don't know. That's what's moving all this. It's not like a bunch of scholars are out there with their philosophy degrees and coming to form a better world. They're angry and they're ready to throw the system upside down just because they're mad and they feel like they're not getting a fair chance. So one thing I've been talking about, I don't want to get religion too much, but I grew up in Christianity and I lost Christianity. But recently I've been coming back to the philosophy of Christianity and the wisdom in there. And one thing that I think our nation has lost is to be fathers to the fatherless. There's all these feral children running around, and everybody's telling them what to think and what rules to follow, but nobody's giving them the wisdom on how to navigate the world and how to navigate finances, how to navigate a job, relationships,
You're
and
definitely
all that
right.
stuff, and where they can succeed in life and have a good life and have a chance at some portion of the American dream. Like, you can say that these people need to do good and they need to follow morality all you want, but if nobody showed them how to connect the dots in their head and in their life, it can be pretty. I think one of the hardest things, I grew up without a father, and I think one of the hardest things for a man today is to figure out how to be a man without a man ever showing him how to do that. And there's correlations with the young women too, that it's very tough to grow up without a father. So I think that is a very, very deep thread that runs through these unrest demonstrations.
It's funny you say that, because that's something that I push very hard, is what you just said right now. And that's dope to hear you say that, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Chuck, go ahead, man. What do you feel like the American people need to know that have not been told through news media, through anything? What is your thoughts?
Well, Villain, I just want to say I am fascinated by what you just said.
Me as well.
Manhood is my driving passion. I've written 10 books, and the last 2 of them had to do with manhood. And the feedback that I get after putting those books out tells me that this is a huge issue. But I was not aware that so many of these 140-pound kids that are out there at 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess it's sort of obvious, because if you had a father, you're not going to allow your teenage son to be out there 2 o'clock in the morning spray painting stuff. But you're gonna train him a little better than that. I think the big thing that I want people to take away from this is the question that I keep asking people when I'm interviewing them. By the way, I've been delving into a lot of their Facebook histories and stuff, and you're right. You find a lot of troubled people that are down there. But what I'm finding is that I'm asking them, what's your objective here? And the funny thing is, it's sort of the question that just stumps them. They usually just start spouting profanities at me and walk off, or call me a cop. I get called a cop a lot. But I really want to know, what's your objective? What is the actual objective? Because if you're trying to make the world a better place, I'd like somebody to explain to me how burning down a 15-story building and assaulting American citizens, literally, look, people are going to die. There's no question about it. People are going to die if this keeps up on both sides. And so my question is, what's their objective? And they just can't answer that question. The people who do answer the question, who do have an objective, seem to be the people who are really driving these protests. Their objective is not compatible with America. It is out and out communism, without a doubt. And they'll tell you that.
Yeah, and that's the scary part about it. I'm gonna bring Anthony on real quick. I believe he had something for you.
Yeah,
go ahead,
that was a good segue. Talking about what the ultimate aim on this is, and if you look at, I took a call from one of our streetlights, and of course I did way more than that. I took the call and then I did some research, and she brought up, living in Portland for 30 years, people aren't understanding the political underminings of what's going on right now and the importance in looking at that. And I want to know, and I'm sure, Chuck, you've had these discussions, probably you as well, Villain. Apparently, China is very, very financially attached. And again, as I said on the other show, please do your research on your own.
Please. This is about to get deep. I didn't know you were about to introduce this. Let's do it. Go for it.
Well, Chuck kind of segued into it because we're talking about the motivations right now and why Black Lives Matter is so involved in this. So you look at the actual background behind Portland or Oregon, for example, being a sister state or a sister city to the Chinese government, and there's actually just south of Taipei, they're considered sister cities. We know that Brown has a lot of ties to the Chinese government, and if you look at the GDP of Portland, which this is all research, the GDP of Portland relies on exporting to China. Portland is one of their main exporters for 2 major items. So then you start looking at the background of why did the governor pull, and it also goes for Washington State. You look at which states right now are showing these small city blocks that are having huge media presence. And you look, and both of them have high Chinese ownership in the businesses.
Yes.
And the Chinese ownership obviously does not like Trump being in office. And this isn't a campaign for Trump, but you look at it in the sense of this is where the election year matters. And you look at the fact that right now they're standing to lose per year, based on what I've researched online, almost $1 billion, almost $1 billion in taxes as a state, based on the tariff wars that Trump has created. So then you look at,
keep going, brother. You digging in. Go ahead, do it.
So then you look at why would you pull the police off of these small city blocks? Because they know them. What's that?
What's the end game?
What's the end game? And that's how it's said. What is the end game? So you pull the police off these blocks, and next thing you know, it's forcing Trump's hand to do what his technical job is, to control these areas. So then you bring in federal government, and I believe, as though Chuck or Villain could speak to this, I believe it's under 150 feds are actually there in that populated area. So you've got 150 people that have been sent, but the metrics behind it looks like martial law. Yes. It looks like we're doing something that isn't fully being done, and it plays on the media, and then it becomes a media circus, because we all know, I should say that, I know, based on my research, Brown stands to benefit from Trump being out of office. Portland, Oregon, Washington State, they benefit from a Democrat president that is going to wide open up all the trade deals again with China. So you open that up, you just saved your state from other country rule. Almost $1 billion in taxes, and I'm sure there's some stuff going into your pockets as well. So that's where people start saying, "What's the end game?" What's your thought process? Either Chuck or Villain. We'll go with Chuck, and then we'll have Villain go. Is this a discussion on ground level that this is really just a gigantic political play?
No, I mean, I think it's just much simpler than that for the people on the ground. It's just Orange Man bad. That gigantic 15-story courthouse is a proxy for Donald Trump. And so, look, I believe that, you should believe your enemy when he tells you he's going to do something. And when you look and actually start to read the graffiti that's being written all over downtown Portland and downtown Seattle. I mean, we haven't even touched on Seattle, but I mean, Portland and Seattle both, the entire downtown area is boarded up with plywood on every window. And if you read the graffiti that they're writing all over everything, it has to do with Trump, and it has to do with authority, with, all cops are bad, that sort of thing. So I think that this is going to continue until the election. And if Trump is reelected, it will continue even more and get worse. If Trump is not reelected, it'll suddenly just go away. All of a sudden, these feds are on our side because they work for the federal government. And so it's not such a big problem.
Okay, so before we go over to you, Villain, look, this is the thing, okay? When you say about the people on the ground, they're just like, Orange got bad. And that's real. That's real. But then we got to ask the question, why would the mayor and the governor be okay with them doing all these things? And it's exactly that reason that Anthony just touched on. They know more than what the people on the ground are ever going to know. They're never going to put it out there for them to know. They don't want them to know, like, hey, you're a part of an agenda that's even beyond the agenda that you think is the agenda. You know what I mean? And when you say about, if Trump gets reelected, then it's going to keep going on. I don't think that that's going to be the case, for the simple fact of right now, the only reason why Trump isn't doing what needs to be done is because they're going to use it and twist it against him. Now, he gets reelected, he's got free reign. He knows he's got another 4 years that's going to come. And believe me, he's going to put that hammer down on that ass for all of them that's out there doing those things that they're doing. And I can't wait. I can't wait for it, because they're getting away with things that are, first off, un-American. Second, inhumane. It just ain't right, But going over here to Villain, let me take you off of mute, sir. What are your thoughts?
I can't speak to the China very much. I don't have that information that you have. I find that interesting to look into it, but I've been calling this a cold civil war for a little while right now. If you look at, I'm not arguing that coronavirus is a plague or it's not a plague. What I'm talking about right now is the draconian laws that some cities and states are putting up for the coronavirus. In Oregon, you still can't go to church like normal. For some reason, restaurants close at 10 o'clock because the COVID hits harder at 10 o'clock, I guess. I don't know. But,
yeah, right.
The cities that are rioting are largely Democratic run cities and Democratic run states. And I think it's a Cold War right now. They're trying to allow the rioters to do this and to bait Trump into pushing the National Guard in, so that so people can cry like, oh, he's sending in the military, he's sending in the National Guard, and that's what they want. They can demonize him. Yeah, but I think this is all about the election, and I agree too. If Trump does, I don't know, man. I don't want to speak too much on this because it's just speculation. But I think either way, whatever outcome comes out in the election, there's going to be some unrest due to that on both sides. If Trump wins, the left is going to go insane. If he doesn't lose, or if he does lose, the nation's going to be in a little bit of trouble. But I will speak to the communist route we were talking about a minute ago. You look at the things like you go to the Black Lives Matter official website and you look at their What We Believe page, and it's almost straight out of the Communist Manifesto.
I'm trying to tell you.
It also talks about the father issue we were talking about. It says that something along the lines of we are for the destruction or disintegration of the nuclear family, the Western idea, and it mentions mothers, it mentions parents, but it's somehow absent any
fathers out.
Father in there. Yeah, it's strange. And then you just read that, and it's all communist talking points. And we might not have all of our Democratic leaders in these cities like pushing for actual communists, but a lot of the policies they're pushing are communist policies to disintegrate a nation so that another government can come in and step and take power.
I have to say this real quick because you're talking about Black Lives Matter and their mission statement and things like that. Black Lives Matter is only for a man if he was born a woman. Let's just call it what it
That's
is.
why in the about me or the what we believe section, it also says Black trans lives matters. It's in that section. Like, what does transgender people have to do with Black Lives Matter? I'm not saying I don't want to get into that topic, but those are two.
They knew that they would get
ideas,
a huge following if they touched on something like that. If they say that they supported that, while it's huge in the media and people are fighting for LGBTQ rights, and they used that, they knew that it was going to blow up their Black Lives Matter movement, and it will make it more inclusive to people that are already fighting politically for what they believe in, which was a smart move. And we all, look, we're American. You do whatever you want to do. Your sexual preference is your thing. I'm not against anybody that's gay or anything like that. I got family members that are gay, and I love them to death, you know. But what they're doing, it's kind of like they're anti-man, and not just anti-man, anti-black man with Black Lives Matter. That's why it doesn't never matter to them when you see black men being gunned down in the streets by other black men. They only care when it's got to do with race or it's got to do with something with the police. It's all a political movement. But I could go on and on and on about Black Lives Matter. I'm more anti-Black Lives Matter than the KKK. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
The sophistry of it all. That's what the patriarchy is fathers. That's what they mean. You listen to what they describe when they say the evil patriarchy. They're talking about fathers. And in the West, our tradition in the West is based on the foundation of the nuclear family. That's the building block of the West. Everybody's heard that. Communism wants everybody to be separated from everybody, and their primary connection is to the state. So the mother is not connected to the son. The father is not connected to the son. They are connected to each other through the state. And everybody is an individual. And that is that is upside down to the culture and the philosophy that has created America.
That's right. I've actually spent a lot of time in communist and former communist countries. And one of the things that you noticed when you go there is that the entire society, even the infrastructure of the society is purpose built and designed to make you feel very small. And very much a cog in the machine, a part of a much bigger collective. You don't have independence in the way that we just take for granted in the United States.
So
yeah, you know what, you two, let me just say something real quick, and then I'm gonna go to you, Patrick, and then we'll go right back up to you, Anthony. Chuck and Villain, hands down, you two are probably two of the best guests that I've ever had on the show, and we've had quite a few. You two, I appreciate you guys for coming on and taking the time out to talk to America and tell them your perspective on the ground, being there. I appreciate your bravery for, coming on and speaking your opinion to everybody, because you guys are out there in a dangerous time, in a dangerous place. So I commend you for that. Thank you guys so much. Patrick, I know you had something that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, when you guys were talking something kind of, talking about the riots and all these things and the end game and all that kind of stuff. And Chuck made the point, for the people on the ground, it's different than it is for the people above, right? The point to the people on the ground, whether you're a protester, whether you're a rioter, it's probably really about time you open up your eyes and realize that you are a pawn in a game that you don't even know you're being played in. And if anybody plays chess, you know what happens with the pawns, right? And that's exactly what's going to happen to these people when the end game is either reached, whether Trump is reelected or not. I agree with you, Bill, and I think we're being set up for a very, very bad outcome, regardless of who wins. You see it in the news media, the way they're talking about it now. And no matter what we do, I don't think there's any getting away from it, right? So we're going to see either complete anarchy on one side or complete anarchy on the other side. But either way, we're going right into it. So, and you were talking about fatherless. I actually talked about this just the other day. I'm a single dad. I've raised my kids by myself, and fatherless it's a problem, right? Like, young men need to be taught how to be men. Young women need to be taught how to be treated by men. That is absolutely a problem in this country, and it's something that I don't know how we fix in the short term, other than continuing to, like, everybody that is active in your children's life, set the best example that you can,
Definitely.
And to speak on the communist part about being, small, I talk a lot about how limitless we all are as human beings. We are all limitless, every single one of us. None of us are small. We are capable of amazing things if we come together and if we believe in ourselves and we work on the things that we put in our head. And so for all the people that are struggling with those kind of things, like, you guys have to understand that you are not small. And this idea that we're going to move this country towards communism, especially drastically, or a socialism switch like this, it's never going to happen.
Nope,
Like
too many great Americans
earlier,
like everybody here right now. There's too many of us that will never allow that. It will be civil unrest in the right way if that ever takes place, because you have strong men like us that right now we're all taking a back seat and letting all this thing play out. Believe me, if we all wanted to, if the patriots of this country really wanted to get together and stop that shit over there in Portland, you better believe it could happen. We wouldn't need no feds, we wouldn't need no police to do it. But we're letting the country handle it the way that it's supposed to be handled before it gets to that point. We're trusting.
They don't want to poke the bear so long that they wake the sleeping bear. That's for sure.
Exactly.
But the bear's awake and we're watching.
No,
right?
we're awake, we're watching, but we're not going to move until it's time to move, and that time hopefully doesn't come. Hopefully our government shows us that, yo, we can trust our government. They're going to handle it the best way that they can, without casualties, without losing American lives, even though these Americans are some ungrateful assholes and don't realize they're living in one of the greatest places in the world. You know, we got to treat them exactly how we treat each other. At the end of the day, they have the right to be assholes, and they don't realize that. People fought and died for them to have the right to be an asshole. But moving forward real quick, I'm not trying to cut you off, Patrick. Anthony, I know you've been dying to say something. I can see you. What is that?
And it's a great follow after Patrick, because we're talking about how we're going to come back together. And you look at it, and it's frustrating right now. And honestly, I don't know what's going to happen after the election. But the way that I believe in it is we have to continue to get the bigger picture out there. And that's people like Villain, it's people like Chuck showing what's on the ground, and then actually having a discussion about it. Somebody comments on the side like, I don't like Chuck's perspective. He's like a war correspondent. He doesn't really know what's going on out there. They don't know what a war correspondent does. There is no sides. It's literally just reporting what is happening. And with that said, the bigger picture, it's the little nuances where you have to start uncovering things on your own. And if I'm going to bring it, I'll bring up the China thing one more time. So Airbnb. So one of the things I didn't mention before,
Airbnb,
is China. China doesn't own full companies in Oregon and Washington. They own 30%. They own 35%. So they're not listed even on Wikipedia as the main owners. Airbnb has a huge stake now in China. They've invested where Airbnb is in China, and China is invested in the United States. They're one and the same. Ironically, with their operational headquarters, aside from San Francisco, are in Oregon. 2 days after George Floyd was killed, $500,000 went to, from Airbnb, $500,000 went to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is ironic considering that this is being spawned still as part of the Black Lives Matter organization / movement. Airbnb just had laid off 1,300 employees from COVID, yet they had $500,000 to spend on a direct spend into Black Lives Matter, which to me is fascinating. Yeah. And again, now we're looking at these states where there are these tech Silicon Valley companies that are heavily invested in China, just like Airbnb, making these donations to Black Lives Matter, knowing that their trade gets directly affected by the election.
Connection dots.
Can't ignore, and you can't tell people that I'm right. I can't say I'm right on this. Look at it. I'm just saying.
Study.
I'm just saying,
look into that for yourself.
I'm just saying, look at it. And Airbnb was one of the examples I pulled up, and it's all over the place, and it's scary. And so back to what Patrick said, finding the way to bring it together is to start showing people these little things, and they have to look you in the face and go, "That's bullshit." Okay, look me in the face, not online. Look me in the face.
Check me out, guys. We are coming up on an hour. I try to keep the show to about 45 minutes to an hour, but this show is very important. And I feel like we're touching on a lot of things that really need to be discussed. Villain and Chuck, how would you guys feel about coming on again on the next Breaking the Barriers? And this next time we'll be a little more prepared with video and other things that you guys would like for America to see. And I will share my platform with you as much as you need. And whenever you guys go live, if you want, I will share it. I will share it on my live or on my Facebook so the world can see, and we can get this out there and start educating Americans a little bit more on what's really going on and seeing why this is a very important thing. You know, think about if America in different cities in our country tried to follow the example of what's going on in Portland. Can you imagine the chaos that would ensue in our country if people
are calling Portland the blueprint?
Yeah.
Exactly.
People are
That's
calling
exactly what I'm
Portland the
saying.
Blueprint City right now.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And that's it's terrifying. So I need you guys. I'm not even gonna lie. I need you guys to come back on. I need you guys to share the information that you have. I need you to share the videos and show how really messed up it is, and how it's not the government, it's not the feds, it's not the police, it's the people that have a hidden agenda, that aren't really people from Portland, that aren't really people that are, that live there. These are people
It's
that
much
are
bigger
coming
than
there.
that, without a doubt. Much bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I'm happy to come back on, and I'm fascinated listening to you guys. We are all, I think, birds of a feather. And it's fascinating because we come from such different backgrounds, such different geographic areas. I don't even live in the United States, and if you think, well, a war correspondent doesn't really understand what's going on, let me just tell you that having lived outside the United States for the last 8 years and going to about 25 countries a year, not usually good countries, all the bad places, I can tell you that coming back to the United States, I get a sense for just how valuable this freedom that we have actually is. And I get a sense that most Americans just don't understand that because they haven't seen what it's like in places that don't have that. And so to be able to see American culture from the outside in, I start to understand why people join caravans and try to walk 4,000 miles to our border. You don't see people banging down the door to get into Cuba. You don't see people banging down the door to get into Venezuela.
Exactly.
Those people are leaving those places to come to the United States because of what we have, and we're about to lose it. So we've got to take a stand and be careful and be willing to stand up and say, this is wrong.
Sir, you are brilliant. And I appreciate you so much for what you do, for moving around and being able to give a testimony that you just gave right now about how great it is to be an American. I appreciate that. Thank you. Villain, what do you got for me, brother?
Yeah, I definitely want to come back on here. I want to do as much as I can to kind of I just got caught up in this riot stuff. Well, my real focus is on philosophy and trying to help people build mental structures in their mind to hold on to hope and to see the world in a positive way versus the natural decay of the psyche will lead towards pessimism. But one of the things that Chuck is talking about is I've been kind of a punk throughout my life, part of that growing up without a father, and I've been too critical on police. I've got some friends that are police, and all the police I know are good guys, but I'm the kind of guy that watches those cop block channels and film the cop kind of guy. But in this, man, it has just shown me how fragile the thread of peace that holds our society together is, and just
that is
how
amazing.
you can literally watch the decay and the bitterness and the anger and the crime just spread through people and how fast it can grow. And I am so much.
There is a very thin veneer of civility that.
I hear you, villain. Hold on. I'm sorry, Chuck.
Sorry,
villain,
I didn't
say
mean
that last part again because that was great. I heard what you said. Say it again.
Seeing this stuff happen in the Pacific Northwest for the last 30 days. I don't know if you guys know, you can watch one of my videos. I was filming CHOP during that great shooting, and I held that 14-year-old boy in my lap on the way to the hospital, and I got him out of there. He might not never live a normal life again if he survives, but I'm just so overwhelmed by all the violence and the crime that's happening, and it's just so thin that this all could go away, all the peace that we have. And I am so thankful now for what our police do when we have to go through, and for our soldiers. I'm thankful for those federal officers out there, all those police officers that are getting canned food thrown at them and bombs thrown at them. And I'm about our country, So
there you go, brother.
I already seen.
Hold that up. Wait. Hold that up again.
Yeah, let's get that up here.
To do that is amazing. Chuck, I know you had one more thing that you wanted to get out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, this is my bad. I just wanted to agree with Villain and say there is a very thin veneer of civility that covers American society today, and it's getting thinner all the time. And when that thin veneer of civility breaks, and we see the breakdown of civility across our country, nothing gets better. This is not making our country better. You want to make our country better? This is not how you do it. So again, we've got to understand what's actually happening, understand the agenda, and we've got to vote, maybe not just at the ballot box, but with our feet. And I'm starting to come to the conclusion that if you are a patriot that lives in Portland, Oregon, if you're a patriot that lives in Seattle, Washington, every dollar in tax you pay is feeding that beast. And you know that your vote doesn't matter because there's no way you're going to be able to vote in anybody. You're just too outnumbered. And so maybe it's time for people that want to belong to that other country, that country I was talking about with Patrick earlier, that that country where we don't lock our doors at night, that country where I leave the keys in my car, that country where I don't have to worry about my neighbor trying to steal my stuff or trying to take anything that doesn't belong to him, because it's a safe, peaceful, polite, civil society. That society still exists, but you might have to pick up and move to get to it. And that's an unfortunate commentary on our culture today, but it's the truth.
You know what? I couldn't agree more. I'm gonna give you guys Patrick, Anthony, Villain, Chuck, I'm going to give you guys the last word. If you could take about 15 seconds. And that was a beautiful message, Chuck. I don't know if you wanted to close with that, but that was dope. All of you guys, please give like 15, 20 seconds real quick. Let's tie this all up and give your final thoughts to America. We'll start with you, Villain. Go right ahead, brother. You got to unmute your mic first.
All right. One thing that I've been focusing on with everybody is trying to create dialogue. We need to get the left and the right, the opposing points of views talking to each other, not screaming at each other, not ignoring each other, not insulting each other, but talking to each other. Because if you look at an XY graph, everybody's kind of moving over to the left and to the right, on that graph. But that's not how people actually are. People are spread all over the graph. And if we talk to each other, we'll see how we all fall in the different spots and we kind of form a big giant circle, and that is not so divisive. But with all this rhetoric that's splitting us and making us think that we are so different than each other, we do have two opposing camps that we view each other as. And dialogue is what conversations like this are what's going to help.
Healthy dialogue.
And
yeah,
I'd like to see conversations like this have some people that disagree a lot more. Some people on the far left get in here and talk.
Yes,
they're willing to.
That's what we do here, brother. To break the barriers down.
To please actually talk to the right. With the left, please actually talk to the right. They usually don't talk or they scream. The right, when you do talk, which you do, that's the virtue of the right. Be nice when you talk. Stop insulting. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to own everybody when you talk. Like, have some passion in your conversation.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Villain. I'm going to drop you off into the backstage. Wait, don't leave yet because I want to talk to you guys personally when we're done with the show, okay? Chuck, you got anything else for him, brother?
No, I mean, I really appreciate this forum. I think that exactly what Villain said, that if we can get people that to talk, and I think the way that you do it is you reach out to people who are a little bit on the left, and they can reach out to people that are further on the left, because we're not going to bridge that gap very well until we go to people that are more in the middle. I talked to a couple of pastors last week in Portland and Seattle who are sort of slightly on the left of black churches, and we had wonderful conversations. I'm going to have it on my podcast this coming week, and some of those conversations. And so, man, I'll get you their contact. We ought to get them on too.
Let's do it. I'm with it, man. I really appreciate you, Chuck, so much. You have no idea. I'm going to be in contact with you. Don't leave yet. I'm going to put you backstage because I want to talk to you guys again. Okay.
All right.
All right, Mr. Be the Change, you got anything for him?
Yeah, the best part about that was learning about Villain that used to watch, and I follow it too, the always film the police thing, and I watch it because it makes me angry, and I'm a masochist apparently. But I watch those segments, and if he's one of those people that now got to see the full thing, because the problem with these short clips, and you see the after the arrest already happens, and already when things have already escalated, people don't know what happened before it. And now he is a part of this whole thing, and seeing the death, the anger, the destruction, and realizing that you can change somebody's mindset. And I don't know how full he was on their side. So seeing that was great. And also realizing and watching, this is a study in skin color and judgment. He was wearing a mask and sunglasses. We all assumed that he was going to come in. We were buckling ourselves up. I watched the audience on the side, just like, who's this clown? Who's this dude? I ain't gonna listen to him. Take your mask off.
Then everybody loved him.
because we don't know the story of the person. So it's the same when it goes for race or what you're wearing or what you're doing. There is a different side behind everybody. So that was actually very cool to watch. And remember,
Brilliant.
be the change you wish to see in the world. Cash, make sure you update them on things like t-shirts and volunteering, which I'll start emailing you guys this week. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being a part of this conversation. Cash, thank you for having me. Be a street light. Be the change.
Gotcha. Wait, don't leave, okay?
I know.
Go ahead, Pat. Bring it in.
What's up, everybody? So to Villain and Chuck, I want to thank them for being here too. That's really amazing that you guys took the time to come out and learn and help us learn. And I wanted to tell you, like, you guys are both talking about a place where people can actually have these conversations. So we didn't talk about it in today's show, but I run a group called Breathe America, and that's exactly what we do there. We're only at 1,500 people. We got quite a few liberals. We got quite a few conservatives, and there are these healthy conversations happening. And I've been watching this for almost a month now, or 3 weeks now. And what I'm starting to find out, and what's really actually coming true, and this is important for everybody to realize, yes, there's like 10% that is just far right, and there's like 10% that is far left. The rest of us are all some shade of purple in the middle. And the fact that we can't talk to each other based on issues like political issues, I mean, it's like the smallest thing that should separate us. But people are breaking those down every day, and they're having these conversations, and people are learning from each other and beginning to understand. And one of the things I want to point out is it's not just talking to people, it's humanizing the other side. We have been trained and taught for a long, long time that we are each other's enemy. Look, I am not your enemy. Like, if you're a liberal or a conservative, I'm not your enemy. I'm an independent, right? I'm not your enemy, and I don't think you guys are enemies either. We are all Americans, and that's what matters most. And if we're going to bring this country together, if we're going to heal this nation, it's going to be through understanding and humanization of each other and respecting each other on a level that allows us to communicate in a healthy way.
Gotcha.
So I love you guys. You guys have a great night.
Don't leave, brother. All right?
I won't.
Okay, my final thoughts. First off, this was amazing. Today's show was very informative, and it showed a lot of how barriers can be broken down. Okay, we had a couple of you guys judged right off the bat, which, you know, that's not what we do here. All right, we're streetlights. To be a streetlight is deep to me. It has a deep meaning. What is to be a streetlight? We don't judge anybody based on how they look. We don't judge anybody off their political belief, off their religious belief, off of the color of their skin. It doesn't matter. What matters is we keep love and unity at the core of what we're doing. That way, you can have them tough conversations. You can dialogue with opposing views without ripping them apart. Because at the core of what we're trying to do is love. We want to gain understanding, and we want to be understood. And the only way that we can do that is, just as quick as we are to speak, we have to be quick to listen. Okay? And you guys, don't look at what's going on in the world today and be discouraged and think that this is going to be the future of the world. Because I can promise you something. There's more good in this world and in this country than there is bad. Regardless of how the media puts it out there and how they try to get you to think, it's not real. There's far more good in this world than there is bad. They want to create fear. They want to create chaos so they can control the situation, so they can control the narrative. We can't allow that. We have to keep each other informed. We have to keep each other together. Regardless if you're a liberal, if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Christian, if you're an atheist, whatever you are an American. And further than that, for the people that are not in America right now that are watching this, we are all humans. Okay? We have to treat each other accordingly as brothers and sisters, because that's what we are. God created us all. Every person, he created us all. We're all capable of great good and great bad. The ones that are doing the great bad, we have to get them to do the great good. And how do we do that? From a place of love. If you're going to correct someone, correct them from a place of love. Make people feel like it's okay to talk to you. All right? That being said, you guys, unite, don't fight, be a street light, because only you can be the change that you want to see in the world. Okay? When you get stressed out, you got to remember, breathe, America. Okay?